Hello, welcome to the After School Show. My name is Parker, and here we are interviewing my great-great-grandma, Valoy Ashworth. How are you today?
I'm fine.
Would you speak up a bit?
Louder? Okay.
Well, how was your day today?
What?
How was your day today?
Oh, it's been great. We've been having a get-together of all the females in my family, or a lot of them, just to get together.
Well, I'll start with, what was your childhood like?
My childhood, it was back in the horse days, before cars. Well, there was some cars, but not very many. We had wagons and horses and cows. I lived on a farm. I knew all the farm tricks and all how to get out, sneak out and get out of doing housework and go with my dad because I wanted to be out on the farm and she wanted me to stay home and be a lady, and I did not. I was a tomboy.
Do you have any comedic stories from your childhood about your siblings, your parents, or
All
some
kinds of them, if I knew what
mischievous
you
things
want.
you've done?
Such as I was much younger than the rest of my family, my brothers and sisters. So I got the job when I was growing up of tending their kids, which I loved. I had a lot of experiences of babysitting, and I loved my family. I loved my mother and dad. It was my job on Sunday afternoon. I had to make a cake for Sunday dinner because everybody came home for dinner on Sunday. And so I had to make a cake. That was my job.
What was your family like?
My family?
Yeah, like your mom and your dad.
My dad was a big guy. He was 6 foot. He was a big man. And I thought he was absolutely perfect because I knew how strong he was. And I knew what he could do out in the hay fields and with the cattle. I just worshiped him. I thought he was absolutely wonderful. My mother was a little dainty gal, like me. She was small. And my dad always told a story about him working in sheep herding and going to this camp where they all gathered, the sheep herders all gathered there to shear sheep and just have a great big party. And he walked into this place where they ate, in their chow house or whatever they called it, and he saw my mother. And he just turned around to the guys that was with him and he said, "See that gal over there? I'm going to marry her. She's just the right size to stick in my hip pocket." And by darn, he did marry her. And they had 7 children. She did a lot of things with him in sheep herds and things until she got children and couldn't go with him. But they had a lot of fun in their lives.
That sounds wonderful. How was growing up?
How was growing up?
Mm-hmm.
It was fine, as long as I could get a horse and take off.
Well, what was the Great Depression like for you and your family?
It was bad. I have some bad memories. I wasn't very old. But my father had a herd of cows, milk cows, that were registered. They were beautiful cows. And he separated the milk. We had what they called a separator, and they'd milk the cows and bring it into the separator and run it through there, and that would take out the cream out of the rest of the milk. And he would do that and sent the cream to the creamery, and I got to run the crank on the separator. I thought everything I did was absolutely wonderful if my dad had let me do it.
What was the war like for you and your husband? I know he fought in it.
No, we were married, and had 2 little children. We were living in California. He was working at an airplane plant there, Lockheed Aircraft. And it came over the radio. You didn't have TV, you didn't have anything, you had a radio. That was the only thing you had. And when it came over and they started to announcing that, we grabbed the neighbors and had the neighbors come and sit there with us on the lawn and listen to what they were telling about Hawaii and what had happened there. And it was being attacked by the Japanese. It was horrible, but it was also very exciting. We lived there in California, right close to the coast, so we got in on what they called the blackouts. On certain nights, the sirens would blow, and we would have to turn out all the lights in the house so that if the Japanese were coming, they couldn't see us. And so it was black. The coast was totally black when they called for a blackout. We were traveling for my brother's house in Santa Ana to over where we lived this one night, and they blew their sirens, and we had to pull off the side of the road and turn off the lights and sit there until that blackout was over. We sat there with our little kids in the car for about a half an hour. But we never did ever have a final fight. They never did get over because they kept them way out in the ocean until, well, we didn't have any. They just didn't get in. We had one couple that came from Oklahoma, which I thought was very funny. They had to come to California, and they were going to go to work and live out there. They came, found them a place to live, and went to bed that night, and we had a blackout. They got up the next morning and packed their clothes and went back to Oklahoma. One night. They couldn't stand it. It was exciting, but it was also scary, very scary. And then when my husband was drafted, and I came home to Beaver to live while he was gone in the Army, I never knew what was going to happen. He was overseas. I would get letters, and of course I was writing to him all the time. But you never knew whether something had happened and he'd get killed or whatever. But he came home and loved the place that I was living in, which was a little house that I had rented from my sister and her husband. And he fell in love with it. It was out in the country and a field around it and everything. And he fell in love with it. And so that's where we stayed and lived, raised our family. We lived there for 40 years. It was wonderful.
Well, thank you for that. How were your kids?
How are they?
How were they?
How were they?
Those little rascals.
The youngest one she was 4 years old, 4.5 years old. My second one was 3 years old. And then I never had any until he came home from the Army. And I had 3 more after that. I had a girl, which is your grandmother, great-grandmother, and another boy, and then my youngest daughter that I am living with now. I had a good family, beautiful family, loved them. They were into mischief all the times, and I was having to get them out of it. Of course, my husband was there. He'd look at them and he'd say, "Ever do that again, you know what's going to happen." But we didn't have any troubles. We had a lot of fun. A lot of fun.
Well, when did you move to Utah with your family?
Well, I was born in Utah, and then we went to California after I was married, and then came back and we've been here ever since. And when I was born was 1922.
Well, do you know about Topaz, where they kept the Japanese?
We had friends that we went to this big grocery store and bought groceries, and the people in there, waiters and that, were Japanese. And when they did this, when war was declared and everything, they gathered up all the Japanese and took them out of there. And most of them came up to Tooele, which is out right across close here, and made a big camp for them there. I can't remember what they called it, what they named it, but it about broke our hearts because we knew those people, loved them, associated with them all the time.
They were just innocent, right?
And they were innocent, and they took them out of there and ripped them out of their homes. It was bad. I couldn't understand it. I still can't understand why they did that, but they did it because of the war. But we never had any trouble with them. They were here. They were Americanized. They'd been here all their lives. Their children had been here. It was sad. It was very sad.
Well, it seems like the audience wants to know if you knew about Philo T. Farnsworth.
Did I what?
Know about Philo Farnsworth.
I sure did.
Do you want to tell us about him a little bit more?
Well, I didn't know him personally, but he's the man that discovered television. And he lived in a little one-room house out on a farm north of Beaver. And I knew that, but he was gone before I ever came to Beaver, before I ever knew. I knew of him, knew where he was born and raised, and then they moved away. But he lived on a little farm about 13 miles north of Beaver. That's where he grew up practically, and that's where he first discovered that he could do this on TV, that he could get a picture, a signal. He's the guy that discovered television.
It's pretty amazing.
Yeah, Philo Farnsworth.
What do you think of things now compared to when you were growing up? How has it changed and how has it affected you?
I'm lost. All these newfangled things, and I can't see very well, can't hear worth a darn, so I am lost in all of this. But I know how wonderful it is, and of course I can turn on the TV and do a few of these things, but so many of the things that you have now, they're miracles. To me, they are absolute miracles. Just live it up, learn about them, enjoy and progress, and you've got a long ways to go.
When did you get your first car? Or when did you first see a car?
Oh, my dad had a car when I was, well, I don't know if I was born, but the first I remember was when I was about 2 years old. He had a Nash car that I don't think they even make them anymore, but it was a really slick car at that time. My dad was really with it, with the best car on the street.
Well, we've got a funny question for you here. Did they have indoor plumbing?
In the town that I lived in, a few of the people right in the middle of town, and the grocery store, the bank, and a few places like that had indoor plumbing. But if you lived out on a farm like we did, you did not have indoor plumbing. We had a four-holer, they called it, out on the hillside that we had to go to. That was our bathroom. We had a number 3 tub that we had to brought in the house and set on the floor in front of the stove. You heated the water in what they called a boiler on top of the stove, And then you filled the tub out of the boiler in there and had your bath in that. That was our indoor plumbing.
Well, did you, when did you start living in a house that did have indoor plumbing?
In a house that had indoor plumbing?
How old were you?
I was 13. I was 13. And my mother and dad moved from the farm that we lived on into a place in town. But all the townspeople by then had indoor plumbing, everybody that lived in town and in that area right close. And we had a telephone, believe it or not. Clear out where we lived, they ran a telephone line out there. So we had a telephone. You hung on the wall and you crank it, and this gal would come on and she's, "Operator, what can I help you with?" You give her the house number or the phone number that you wanted, and she'd say, "Thank you," and hang up and ring. You could hear it ringing, and the lady, whoever we had phoned, or whoever we called, picked it up on the other end, and you had your station back and forth just with those two. And if they needed anything or somebody wanted to interrupt you, they could. They'd say, "Sorry, we've got this going on," or "We've got that going on." So we have to interrupt. We did not have privacy. We did not have your TV. TV was absolutely, well, Philo Farnsworth.
When did you first get a TV, and what was it like?
When I first got a TV, they had TV a long time before I ever got one. But the one we had was, it was about like that. It was what did they call them? A console TV. And we could get all of the stations. Salt Lake. We couldn't get California then, even. But we got California right after that. But we had the Salt Lake Temple, or Salt Lake stations when we got it.
Well, I heard you were the one adjusting the antenna for everyone to watch TV in Beaver.
The what? Did you what?
What? I don't know what you're trying to ask.
Just ask it louder, show.
Grandma, weren't you and Grandpa the ones that were adjusting the antenna in Beaver to keep it going in Beaver for everyone?
Yeah, the one operating the TV.
My husband, he was in the National Guard, he was working in an auto parts factory store. And the fellow that he was working for, and him, and a couple of other guys went out with their viewfinders, whatever you want to call them then, and all over the hills out around, and they've come up to this one hill. Up on the top of it is out north of Beaver, and they found a good strong signal up there. Now, other places in Utah and all over had TV then, but Beaver didn't. So they found this signal up there, and these guys got the materials together and went out and built a great big, it was like a tower, and they wired it up and had it so that it went up to the top, and they could get that signal and bring it into Beaver. And also the squirrels and the woodchucks found out that they had wiring out there, and so they would go and help themselves and chew all the wiring up. So we were going, and I'm saying we because Grandpa would say, "Come on, I'm going to TV Hill," and I'd run and jump on the back of the roadmobile that he had and go to the hill with him a lot of the times. And we'd go up there and have to trace down all this wiring that we had on the ground going up into this tower and find out where it was chewed and repair it. no matter what the weather was. And let me tell you, if it went out, all the phones started ringing in the whole town. Get the television fixed. So these guys and their little scooters that they had would jump into them and go up on TV Hill and trace down those signal and wire it back up together. It was very exciting. We decided, or our husbands decided, that they had a place, a home there in Beaver. The signal should come in. And so guess what they had for an antenna? They were up on the roof of this house with a metal bed spring. I don't know if you kids even know what a metal bed spring is. But they had a metal bed spring, and they were up on the house, on the top of the house, with this bed thing going around and turning around. And we were downstairs, down in the house, and they'd say, "Are you getting a signal?" And we'd say, "No, not yet. Turn it a little bit this way or that way." We struggled all one afternoon and half the night, but we never did get the signal that day. But that's what we were trying to do, to get it into Beaver. But they finally got it, and we had television. We're still getting it off of TV Hill. Even now, that's where our TV comes from.
I have one more question for you. How many grandkids do you have?
Oh, you would ask me that. I can't tell you exactly, but up in the 50-something. And I've got about 4 new great-great-grand ones coming right away. So it's gonna, it'll be up into 60 before I'm through,
6 generations will be coming.
if I live for the next 2 or 3 months.
Yeah, no, it'll be great, great, great.
Uh-huh.
It'll be 6 generations.
It'll be 6 generations.
So we have 6 more? Six great,
There's
great,
5
great.
generations with you and me, and there'll be 6 with my cousin Dina's kids.
So in total, how many grandkids would you say? Plus great, 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 and great, great, great.
All together? Oh, I can't tell you.
Just give a slight estimate.
Sherry?
Probably over 200 anyway, I know that, at least.
It's about that.
Yeah.
It's a lot.
I added up the statistics from last year when we interviewed her, and it was 104. So it's probably gone up twice by now.
No, it's a
Not
lot more than that, 'cause
twice,
she just has
but it'll be
she has
quite a few.
135 great grandkids.
Yeah, I
Alone.
just did it from last year.
And that's not her grandkids, and then the great greats, and then now the great great greats. So.
Yeah.
Tell them how old you are, Grandma.
Well,
I'm 99 years and 5 months.
No, it's longer. No,
I'll
you're
soon be 100 years old.
on January 18th. You'll be 100 years old. She's the same age as Betty White. She's born the
Yeah.
day after. Betty White was born
If
on
you
the
know Betty White on
17th,
TV,
Grandma's born on the 9th.
our birthdays are the same.
wow.
You're gonna outlive Betty White, right?
Yeah, I do. Oh,
You think you will?
I don't want to. They say it's an honor, but it's a pain in the Really, when you can't hear and you can't see, you can't do the things that you used to, it's very frustrating. But I'm doing okay. I have a good life. I have good children, 4 beautiful, wonderful daughters, and some granddaughters. I just have a beautiful family, and I'm so grateful.
All right. Well, thank you everybody for watching this. We'll see you next time.